As an aspiring young musician, there's not a better backdrop to life than the 70s and 80s in and around Los Angeles, and such is the story of Eric Scott Williams. Now, before you get all excited about this, I need you guys to know that the sound quality was junk. For some reason, our gear went backwards and haywire, but we restored it back to a very close to a listenable audio transcript. All you have to do is pay attention and let the vibe flow with you. It's a great interview. It gives you a lot of insight to a lot of famous names you know and a lot of people. Eric Scott Williams is still, to this day, living in the LA area doing the same thing he's done for the last 40 years. Listen to the interview. Tell me what you think. Welcome to KGXT, Gen X Talks podcast, live from Central California.
Making plans with the boys. I'm gonna hit the town. Yeah, I'm gonna make some noise. I'll push past the pain and my wounded pride. I'm gonna live it up. Yeah, stay out all night. But sure, I've had some better times. And I can't count all the tears I've cried. And maybe down my last time. Yeah, but the blues took me just fine.
Listen, if you guys are here looking for the podcast where my wife kicks the shit out of me for an hour, you keep looking. This isn't it. This is one of the interviews that we're sprinkling in. I don't know if you don't like it, just skip it. It's okay. We all have things we don't like in life. Anyway, in studio. Yeah, we prefer the in studio versions, not the Zoom call stuff. This is KGXT Studios. This is Gen X Talks interview, broadcasting 200 feet below occupied California, somewhere around the Cienega campground, but I won't tell you where that is. Today, listen, I'm excited. I'm going to try to pick friends of mine that I know to talk about stuff. If you guys have any inclination about the music industry in the 80s in Los Angeles, no better way to learn about that stuff from the guy who was there. He was in it. He observed it. He's still in the music industry. He's made a career out of it. I got to tell you, I'm excited about this guy coming in. It's been a long time coming. This will be a great interview for those of you that have any sort of a conscience and a soul and a sense of humor, because that's what this is going to be. So let's get right to it. My guest is Eric Scott Williams. Eric, thanks for taking the drive up here, man. I am really thankful that you made the effort. You didn't have to, but you did brave the elements. Appreciate you being here.
$10 is $10.
Well, and a free lunch. You said $10 and a free lunch, so the lunch is on its way. God, where do we begin? We've known each other for probably, I want to say it's got to be about 12, 13, 14 years now.
That's about right, yeah.
But then we kind of almost knew each other 40 years ago. We had so many of the same friends that were friends of friends, but we never got to the same place at the same time.
Same time, yeah. Just, we were rumors to each other from these people.
That's a good way to put that. Yeah, it was absolutely amazing to look back and go, well, you were there. I almost went to that place.
Yeah.
You were at that gig. I almost went there too. But I was very glad that we got introduced. I consider you a dear friend because you've been so good to me and my family for all these years, and everything you've helped us with. And I will tell you that the ladies and gentlemen, the big push that we had that forced our friendship together for a few years. Eric is a musician. He plays bass and he does a lot of stuff. He's a man of many parts, as they say. But you were in a band called Highway Down, and we stumbled across each other, and you guys were playing gigs and doing stuff and writing music. You guys put out a CD. For those of you who keep asking me what the intro music and the exit music of all of our podcasts are, that's Highway Down. Some of you have bought the CD. We still have a truckload of them, but for those of you that have bought them, they've been great conversations. Eric's one of the forces behind Highway Down, which was a short-lived venture, but we did have a time where we were trying to make a go of it, but I really forced myself into helping, and I probably shouldn't have.
No. You were the band's greatest advocate, and had we followed through, that would have borne fruit. Absolutely.
You guys, I was
know?
your biggest advocate because
Yeah.
I thought I was watching so much talent. And it wasn't because I knew you guys. I was like, this is great music. This is great stuff. Why is the world not? So I remember jumping in like, hey, if I get a gig here, if I can get you this and I can do that, I had no business doing that. Who was I to tell you guys where to play and what to do? But I remember jumping in, and I'll tell you, we'll get to some of the music industry stuff, but I learned a hard lesson when I went to one of the radio stations and I brought your CD in there, and I said, and I was talking with one of the program directors. It was a country music station.
Yeah, Chris Winston.
What was his name? Yeah, that was it.
Yeah,
Chris Winston, I think was his name. And he was a good guy, knew a lot of stuff about the music industry. And I said, I got frustrated. And I said, whatever happened to the days when you recorded a record and you ran up to your local radio station and you held it up to the glass and you told the DJ, play my song. And they did. And if people liked it, they went and bought it. If people liked it, they called in and requested it. And he shook his head. He goes, those days are gone, my friend. You're never going to you can't ever do it. And they did sneak in your songs on a couple things for me. I think out of pity for me, because I was a big fat guy crying at the time to help my friends. But God, I didn't understand how the music industry was so calculated by money and nothing else mattered. I had no idea. So let's back up. Let's go. Let's start back at the beginning on how you got it. Where were you born, and when did you end up in Los Angeles? Is that where you started?
No. I'm the only child of 7. I was conceived in Gulfport, Florida, born in Connecticut. A few years later, landed in Houston, then Plano. Got to Los Angeles in 1971.
Did you just say you were the only child of 7?
Yes.
Okay, that either means you were the only child or you were the only one that mattered.
No, in fact, it's a complicated and sometimes sad story, tragic story, but basically it comes down to I am the only product of my parents' marriage.
Oh,
and
okay.
I have half siblings from previous marriages.
I think it was funnier the way I said it. You were the only child that mattered. All right, so you end up in Los Angeles, and how old were you when you got there?
I got here at 5 years old.
All right, and whereabouts did you grow up? What part of L.A.?
Studio City, which was, at the time, certainly the epicenter of pop culture.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm living there on Beck Avenue. I'm a few blocks from the Brady Bunch house. I'm walking to school every day to Rio Vista Elementary School. And, Jim Rockford's driving by, and then there's Adam 12 over here.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're in the valley where I grew up. You and I were doing the same thing. Yeah. It was the epicenter of everything, of music and movies and commercials. It was all around us. Yeah. All right. So you get into music. How early did you start playing bass?
I actually didn't pick up bass until I was about 14 or 15 years old. But I always wanted to. It was always a subtle thing. I lived across the street from a guy named Todd DeVito, and his father was the percussionist for the Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
Really?
And he was a drummer. And so he taught me how to play basic beats and things like that. And,
right.
And, like any kid, music of the 70s was fantastic.
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah.
I lived with my older sister, LaDonna, and she's 5 years older than me and had a little more sophisticated taste and stuff like that. So, a lot, all the great rock and roll records that were coming out.
Because she's buying all the records and you get to listen to them. You get all the benefits, sure.
So, I get turned on to all this stuff through that. And, so my dad bought me a drum set at a pawn shop. And, but shortly after that, my parents were divorced. There was a custody battle. And, in 1976, February 1976, my mom was just and her lawyer were gonna beat my dad down, and my dad exercised the nuclear option and kidnapped me. And we lived out of the back of a 74 Volkswagen bus traveling around the country for 3.5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
now, right about the time in 76, when you were when your home was a VW bus, 76 is when I moved to the center of the San Fernando Valley. We were in Van Nuys.
Yep.
We got there. I was in Sun Valley for a while, but we went right as you were leaving. I moved across the valley to the center.
Right.
And so I get where you're at with that stuff. So nobody wakes up. Okay, let me back up. and this is my non-musical showing through. Nobody's born going, golly, I really want to play bass. That's never anybody's thing. They don't wake up in the morning and go, gosh, if I could just get a bass. Everyone wants to be lead guitar or a drummer. Nobody. How did you convert? How did you get to that point?
It's funny because I actually did. I mean, even music wasn't my first thing. I wanted to be a syndicated cartoonist.
Really?
That was my real goal. And matter of fact, while I was on the road those 3.5 years, I was just drawing constantly and developing characters and everything. And then at some point along the way, my dad was like you were taking the Highway Down CD and going to the
pushing
radio
it.
station,
Yeah,
pushing
sure.
it. My dad was taking it to my stuff to newspapers.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's something I did not know about you,
Yeah.
friends, all these years, and I did not know that.
But ultimately, I ended back in California. We're caught in Florida. And which is funny. Now Florida's a funny place because kidnapping is like not even a misdemeanor there. It's more like an infraction. And
some of the stuff that goes on in Florida just amazes me,
Yeah.
even today.
yeah, so we're on the west coast of Florida. We're in the St. Petersburg area, and my dad has a sister out there, and she's married to a guy. He has a really big garage in Madeira Beach. 7-bay garage,
Yeah,
big business repairing cars out there, and he's working on my dad's VW bus. And he's going to have it for a while. And so he's got this old Chevelle there that's there for a lien sale. And he's like, here, why don't you take this? And so we're driving around in that. And, of course, it doesn't have up-to-date tags or anything. So Pinellas County Sheriff pulls us over.
So you didn't get somebody knocking on your door. They just flagged you down for tags or something.
For
Okay,
that.
all right.
So, they run my dad down, and it's like, oh, sir, we have a warrant for kidnapping in California. Would you follow us back to the station? Not throw him down on the car, cuff him, or anything like that. Follow us back to the sheriff's station. And he does.
In a Chevelle, I'd have been tempted to not follow the guy back.
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, all right, let's see how closely we follow you here.
Yeah. So he ends up in a holding cell. Well, for like 8 hours.
Where were you? Were you in the car when this happened?
Yeah. So I'm
where'd
hanging
you
around the
end up?
station, and then a friend of my dad's or a friend of the family comes in. They take care of me for the day.
I like how you said that, hanging around the station. Now there's specific chairs and rooms you sit in as a child, but you just going to the vending machine, getting yourself some stuff. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
I got you.
This is 1979, and children are free rangers. They're not keeping too close of an eye on us.
Right.
But the state of California decides they don't want to extradite my father.
What? Not even worth the hassle?
Yeah.
Like, no, just keep him in Florida.
They're like, okay, no. They're like, no. This is a custody case. We're not. No.
Yeah. Not a hardened criminal here.
But they notify my mom.
Right.
So suddenly, like the next day at 4:30 a.m., I got a phone call from my mom. She knows everything. And eventually that leads to me coming back.
So what time did you get back here? What time? What year did
I
you
get
end
back in 79.
Okay, so you're
Summer
back
of
here.
79, 8th grade.
Okay.
Start
now where are you? Back in Studio City again?
Back in Studio City.
All right.
And
what junior high did you go to back then, 8th grade?
That was Walter Reed.
Walter Reed. Okay,
Yeah.
I know where that is.
And then my mom and her boyfriend, they decided to buy a house in Northridge. So we move up there, and I end up in Frost Junior High. And now I had a tough time of it because I did not like most of the popular rock and roll that was going on at the time. You go to junior high, 8th grade, 1979, you're walking around, every kid's got Led Zeppelin scribbled on their thing,
It was the Stones, it was Rush, it was Led Zeppelin. Van Halen was making their appearance. And you also had, there was...
Exactly.
You had other things coming in, but we were crossing, you and I were crossing over 79, 80, 81.
Yeah.
There was a change moving in music.
Yeah, but for me, I liked yacht rock. I liked, basically white R&B. And most of all, I liked the Bee Gees, which was the uncoolest thing you could possibly like.
At that time, you were a little late.
So
the Bee Gees got ostracized.
Absolutely. But I liked all the Bee Gees all the way back to 1967.
Yeah, right.
And everything, I just thought they were a great band. I thought the record sounded exciting and everything. But, I had the audacity to have an opinion of my own And so my classmates decided that I must die.
Well, I got to be fair with you. At that time, the Bee Gees was a capital offense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I got my ass kicked on a fairly regular basis. And this is what led to music, though, in kind of an odd
Well,
way.
before you tell that, I watched an interview one time with I think it was Barry Gibb, and he said it was really funny to watch how much people hated us because when they turned on disco, they turned on us. He goes, we just played rock and roll music from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. He goes, we just played whatever felt good and was rhythmic for the time. He goes, but because an era, a genre of music went down with hate, we got drugged down with it. He goes, there was 10 years we didn't want to play a song. We wrote 300 songs for other bands.
Yeah.
And you guys liked those.
Yep.
You didn't mind when we wrote songs, but I thought that was an interesting way to put that it was just rock and roll. It was just what was popular at the time, and they went down with the ship. All right. So you're getting your ass kicked. Let's go there.
Yeah. Well, I'm also a little bit slow on the uptake. We moved to Northridge. I started at Frost Junior High School. And instead of hiding my like for the Bee Gees music, no, I let them know again. And sure enough, I'm getting my ass kicked all over again.
You'd think, Eric, you could have a little caution. Yeah. Caution would be the word. Yeah. All right. So how did this end up? You got to tell me how this ass kicking got you into music.
But there was a lot of things that went on. I come back that summer.
Yeah.
My mom, my boyfriend, Steve, he's 29 at the time. He went to USC from 1967 to 71.
Right.
So he comes out of that with the mother of all record collections.
I bet.
So
wow.
I'm back that summer, 79, and I'm going through this record. It's got all the Moody Blues, all the Rolling Stones, all the Beatles.
Wow.
All the Crosby, Stills, and Nash. It's just everything. It's just a treasure trove of great music. All the Cream records,
Wow.
And these are all the original prints of everything.
Sure, yeah.
And,
Tower Record stuff, man.
So, I'm digging this stuff. So, and the things that stood out to me were the Bee Gees. Bee Gees' first album, 1967, was really good. And then, of course, all the Beatles stuff. So I turned into a big time Beatles head.
Yeah.
So going back to Frost Junior High, I'm there for a couple of weeks, and John Lennon gets killed. It's murdered.
That's right.
And, that hit me hard. That's the first time anybody I didn't know John Lennon, but anybody I remotely knew of.
Yeah, and you had a connection like you liked the dude. Yeah.
So that shook me pretty hard. Well, I'm sitting in woodshop one day, and there's this guy next to me in woodshop, and his name's Trent Corbett, and he's got a Daily News there, and he's a newspaper, and he's reading an article on the Lennon assassination, and I asked him to look at, and I'm reading it. We start talking. Well, he just moved there too from Hacienda Heights, so we're two new kids.
Yeah,
turns out we're total Beatles heads.
Right.
He has all the Beatles records that I don't. Lives a couple blocks from me, and he's got guitars. And so I'm like, this is one of these things that's like a secret desire of mine. Plus, there's another thing going on there, and that is, from the Beatles, one of the things I learned is as a shy 14-year-old with aspirations of being a cartoonist.
Yeah,
I'm not pulling a lot of girls.
You think that's not your cartoon venture wasn't hot with chicks, huh?
Yeah, it's just that's not working. And you turn on especially that time, John Lennon gets killed. They're pulling all the archival footage up, and you're seeing all these
screaming fans,
these screaming girls, and you see them when they're in Hamburg and stuff. You see, nice little girls, smart girl glasses, bouffant hairdos. And they're going over German police barricades to get to the Beatles.
Wow. You couldn't get to a guitar fast enough.
Exactly.
I learned a valuable lesson. I'm not a musician. I don't play an instrument, but I learned a valuable lesson from one of my friends. I went to Madison Junior High, so it was across the valley from you, right in the middle. And the guy said, I go, how'd that work out with that girl? I've been pursuing this girl for a long time. He goes, well, I made my move at a party last Friday. I go, how'd that go? He goes, I learned the difference in how you say things. And I go, what? Because he was guitaring. He was guitaring and drumming. He was trying to get girls. He goes, you got to tell him you're in the band, not in band. I said, what? He goes, I told her I was in band and she didn't care. I go, because she thought you were in the school marching band, you idiot. Don't tell girls you're in band. You tell you're in a band. He goes, yeah, I got that now, but I'll never make that mistake again. There is a difference when you're in band and you go to band camp. When you're in a band, you write your own rules. There's a difference. So, all right, go ahead with your story. Sorry for the delay there, but it's stuck in my head.
Yeah, no. So, but, he's got these things, and I'm like, okay, well, I've always wanted to learn.
And I take it he knew how to play a little?
He knew how to play a little bit. And then he had the books there, and I was the guy who was able to decipher the little chord symbols in the books. And so I did that, and then bugged my parents. They got me a Yamaha acoustic guitar, and we hit the books and just learned that way. It's funny because I didn't have a lot of innate talent. There wasn't this sort of musical thing inside me. I would
disagree with that. Really?
Yeah.
Because where you are now versus when I met you, no way would I believe that.
I had to cross a bridge. Music was, what made it work for me was the math aspect of it. I started taking music lessons and learned theory and stuff. When I learned theory, I learned how it was all constructed. So whereas most really, legit musicians come at it, music's in their head. I had friends who could just pick up anything and just pull music and pull something you'd want to listen to, pull melody and structure and everything out of it. I was one of very typical guys who just sort of like banged on it and learned, you might learn one lick.
Yeah, but then you're describing yourself as more analytical to the whole process.
Oh, but, yeah, totally.
But it worked. At some point, it worked.
It absolutely did. And of course, they got me an acoustic guitar, which now I wanted an electric guitar, of course. So the first thing I said about going, and this is where the next bridge is me being an engineer. I had this Mattel Electronics Battlestar Galactica game. And
now you've always been adept to the engineering, the voltages, and you get all that stuff. Like it comes to you naturally.
Yeah. Like I told you that earlier. It's just, there are people who fall out of the womb, Mozart.
Yeah.
And he's composing symphonies at age 5.
Right.
I fell out of the womb and understood low voltage DC circuits.
Not nearly as cool, but
Not nearly as cool. So, anyways, I noticed this for our viewing audience.
Yeah,
Mattel Electronics game here.
That is an original from 1983, I think. Yeah.
Well, I had the Battlestar Galactica game, and the little switch here was broken. The thing really wasn't any good, but so at some point I had taken it apart trying to figure out how to fix it. But one of the things that I pulled out of it was this little disc speaker.
Right, which they all have.
Yeah, and what I understood is that a transducer is a transducer.
Yeah.
Whether it's a pickup or a speaker, a microphone, transducer is a transducer. So I made a contact pickup out of this thing, found a place on the bridge underneath the soundboard to attach it.
Wait. You took apart a handheld video game from the early 80s and you attached it to your guitar?
And made a guitar pickup out of it, yes.
No.
Yeah.
With that little speaker, I mean, what could it possibly put out?
Well, it's funny, and it's like, I know some things about low voltage. I didn't know anything about impedance or anything like that.
Yeah.
At that point, but no, I wired it up to to the little 1/8-inch microphone input on a Panasonic boombox, a little mono boombox, tape recorder, not. And you plug that in. You put the tape in, you put a little thing over it, and you hit record and pause.
Right. So
and now you've got a gain control.
Yeah. It's using it as your input, your mic.
Yeah. And you enable the tape monitor function, and now it's an electric guitar.
So wait, you take your acoustic guitar, a broken handheld video game, Battlestar Galactica, which I don't even recall that game, and you wire it through a little tiny, for lack of a better term, little ghetto blaster. Yeah. And we do what we all did. We put tape over the thing so the record button would work.
Right. Yep.
And then you press pause. Now you're using that as your little amplifier. Is it actually an input?
Yes.
So now, I'm laughing at this, but I've heard these same stories when Eddie Van Halen did interviews on how he started learning the same things and doing the same trial and error with little things like that. Okay, that's impressive. How long did that go before you stepped up from there? Because
well, it's funny because I had I'm learning the chords and everything, and then of course Trent, he's got his boombox, and we don't have multi-track tape players, so I would sit there now, and then I would record into one,
right,
and then I would play it back and have the other one sitting next to it using the built-in microphone, and I would record another part on that, and we would multi-track
tape to tape.
And that's how I learned how to play guitar harmonies and different parts and stuff like that. So I was learning it, and
all in Northridge.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's funny because Northridge, Porter Ranch.
Yeah.
It's a pretty high-end neighborhood, well-to-do kids, but it's Trent and I. The other thing we had something in common is our parents weren't going to buy us anything.
Yeah. Well, I spent a lot of time in Northridge. My cousins lived out there. I think it was probably 1977. Yeah. My uncle moved out there. He wanted to be in Northridge. So same time you were there.
Yeah. It's so funny because my mom and her boyfriend, they're bankers, but they may as well have been minimum wage factory workers as far as how it reflected on my lifestyle.
In other words, they had money, but no one could ever tell by looking at you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So did you ever join a band or try to make a band? Did you guys ever play
in
some
high
live
school?
stuff?
Yeah, we definitely, a couple of things, Trent and I, and then shortly we found, the neighborhood drummer and stuff, and we'd, hack it out in the garage. And, Trent, unlike me, Trent actually did have the musical talent. And so he could learn a lot more stuff by ear as opposed to where I had to learn by reading.
Right.
And he formed chord progressions and
did you guys make your own music, or did you cover stuff?
We mostly just did cover stuff, and we were not very good at all. But the thing that happened was that summer, one of the things that came on TV, literally on TV, you remember on TV?
Yeah.
It was a Joni Mitchell concert called Shadows and Light. And her band in that was essentially, it was Jaco Pastorius on bass, Don Elias on drums, and I'm trying to think of the famous jazz guitar player. That part of your brain that holds names.
Yeah, I got you. I'm surprised you remember Joni Mitchell. We're good.
No. And the concert was fantastic. Seeing Jaco Pastorius play bass I knew it was something special.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks of Jaco Pastorius as Weather Report and some of his solo stuff, but him playing Joni Mitchell pop tunes was otherworldly, and it was beautiful. And he would take things like Free Man in Paris, and just added a groove to it. And I just, and he's kind of a weird looking dude, but I just thought he was cool as hell.
So that drew you in right there.
That drew me in, and that's where the jump to bass came from.
Okay, I got you.
And then, of course, you jump to bass, and suddenly the phone's ringing. And and then I've got jazz band in high school.
Well, there had to have been people, because that's not something everybody does. So other bands that are really trying to put themselves together, they're looking for a guy like you.
Yeah,
they're looking for that missing piece.
Yeah,
I could see that.
And one thing is, I was dedicated to it. I practice all the time. Really wanted to learn it really bad.
Sure.
And even though I was just, sometimes practicing the wrong things or whatever.
But you always had your hand on always. Yeah.
Always. So, well, the next year, a guy named Jack Mandel shows up at school. And Jack Mandel is a real uber talent. He's the guy who really... And his father, he comes from a family of jazz musicians.
Gotcha.
Was a jazz singer. His father used to play keys for everybody from he had gigs with Benny Goodman, Joe Pass.
Wow.
His father was the real deal.
Yeah.
And Jack and I hit it off. We became best friends almost immediately. And so, and again, he was the real talent, so I had to really keep up. And
what did he? Was he a singer? Did he? Did also?
No, he was a guitar player.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and an extraordinary guitar player. You know, he's 15 years old and he's playing Eruption.
Wow.
You know, a lot of kids do that now, but they've got YouTube.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, he had to do it by ear, by his wits.
Wow.
And with real talent.
Now, what year is this about? Would you say?
This had to be 1982, 83.
Okay. All right.
And then there was another guy at school, Chris Conti, and Chris Conti was I mean, not only was a real talent, he had a work ethic and a real talent, and he started, you know, he had a band that was working, like a real working band playing 4 sits a night for whatever, and I got into that band in my senior year, and that was great. So my first,
do you remember the name of the band?
Jinx.
Jinx.
JYNX, yeah.
Because, you know, there's going to be somebody who goes, I saw them play at the Starlight Bowl when I was 15, man, or something.
Never did that, but we did, you know, we did play, you know, a couple of like, you know, like, I think we played like LGT Vegas or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, but we played, you know, we did corporate events. We did, like the American Savings Christmas Banquet. We did this,
which everyone aspires to. Like,
well, no, it's funny because those gigs now, that's how you make money in music right now.
Really?
Absolutely.
And back then you were just a bunch of kids who just were hot on the stick. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was funny because the first gig we played, I remember, was this Halloween party at a Knights of Columbus Hall in Sylmar.
Really?
And after the gig, Chris hands me $75.
Wow.
I'm kind of blown away because I didn't think of music as something you made money with.
Yeah.
You know, I thought the path was you just, you know, work it out, you make demos, you send the demos in, you get
see what happens,
and then you get
right?
money. And no, that's never been the way it was.
But you made a couple bucks, man.
Yeah, so
right then you were a professional because you were a paid musician, period.
Yeah.
All right.
And so we did paying gigs, and I bought better gear and kept working my way up. So
what is it now? Before you go into anything, the
funny thing is now you play a gig like that, you make $75 40 years later.
Well, it's always funny. They make fun of musicians. They're like, musicians are the only guys that would pour, you know, $7,000 of equipment into the back of a Volkswagen and drive it 500 miles to play a gig for $100 bill.
Yeah.
You guys do that. You're dedicated to the craft more than the money, obviously. Yeah. Before you go into the bigger stuff, did you play any place that you remember or meet anybody during that time you just up and coming in the high school era that you bumped into that became somebody later that you ran across, or was it still just all too local, San Fernando Valley?
Yeah. There was nobody, no bright shining stars that were lurking in the shadows.
All right, just asking. So. Don't want to miss a story, man. I don't want to miss one. All right, so then you doing the high school gig. You guys are getting better. Yeah. Do you stay together, the band?
No. You know, everybody kind of, you know, it's the typical thing after high school. Everybody kind of just goes their own separate ways. So
now you're alone with your bass. Now what?
Well, I tell you what, it's after high school, and of course, you know, LA Unified taught me nothing about how to live.
Right. Truth to there, I tell you.
So it's like, you know, the day after graduation, I'm sitting there with deer in headlights. My parents want me to get a job, and I don't know what the hell to do.
But you had your bass.
But I had my bass. But yeah, and honestly, no, I took stupid jobs, worked for temp agencies and things like that. And no, the odd way, the next step in the music journey was I'm working at Lumber City in Valencia.
Yeah.
And this guy's buying some, like, you know, pavers and stuff like that, and rather new wave looking guy. And he's like, looks at me, he goes, by any chance do you play bass?
No way.
Oh, absolutely. And then, by the way, by any chance do you play bass? Someone looks at me and says that. Has happened at least 5 times. I've been in 5 different bands from a random person in a party. By any chance do you play bass? Yes, I do.
What are you, the poster child for a bass player? I would not have known that. How do you? That's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
No, I think it was mostly, I mean, this is the 80s, and, you know, the 80s were not a very substantive decade.
Perhaps not. There
was a lot of image over substance, and, you know, really my calling card was good hair.
Well, if that's what you get you in the door, who cares? Yeah. Your wife once told me that she knows how old a person is by who they associate you with. Right. If they say, "Oh, your husband reminds me of Bobby Sherman," then they know that person is like 60 years old. Right. She knows by how they associate who you look like, how old they are. Yeah. Because you do have a musician's look about you that transcends. I'll give you that. Yeah. Not at all. So this guy asked you if you play bass. Yeah. At Lumber City. Yeah. All right. What happened there?
Well, okay. Well, he tells me he's got a band, and at the time it was funny. I in the early '80s, again, you were talking about music changing in the late '70s, early '80s.
Yes.
There was this, in the late '70s, I'm listening to, like you said, the Bee Gees and a lot of yacht rock stuff. But the other things, I liked what they called corporate rock back then. I liked Journey, I liked Boston, I liked Styx. Because those were like the big production bands that really had a sound to them.
Super groups.
But then there was this change happening. There was this new wave thing coming, and Queen. I was a huge Queen fan.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And and things were changing fast.
Oh yeah, from 80 to 82, you almost couldn't recognize the landscape of the top 40.
Absolutely. So I'm listening to this new stuff, and to me, it's a little bit of a joke because a lot of the new wave and stuff, it seems like you didn't have to know how to sing.
Well, okay, I'm not a musician. I was one of those people who just listened to the top 40 music. Yeah. And people like you that were musicians used to make fun and go, "This is bubblegum, man. You don't have to have any talent to play what you guys are listening to." Yeah. So I see what you're saying. I mean, I get it now. I didn't know then.
And there was a lot of synth stuff. And then it's one of these things I'm kind of, as a survival instinct, going from the Bee Gees paradigm to the rock and roll paradigm, the hard rock stuff.
Right.
Started to get into Rush big time.
Oh, yeah.
And, so I'm a little late to the party, but I'm really liking a lot of the hard rock sounds and stuff that are happening. And that's already being supplanted. And then, so one of the things that happened was Queen came out with this Hot Space record. That was it was like a slap in the face. It was them trying to be, I don't know, relevant.
Yeah.
I don't know. In the new wave thing, it's all synth. We're not hearing Brian May or anything like that.
Electric drums and I don't.
So I'm just like, And then Styx comes out with Mr. Roboto. And I'm just like, what the hell, man? And I remember 82, everybody's waiting for the next Rush record. And Signals gets released. Yeah. Me and all my friends, we're all, we know that KLOS is going to play the new Rush record at 7 a.m.
Yep.
Before we get to school. And so we're all waiting there and we're like, just like, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? They do. And the first thing they play is Subdivisions. And we hear this, and we hear this big synth pad and we're just like, so disappointed.
You thought they sold out.
Yeah, exactly. Which, it turns out we were wrong about it.
That's not how I know, but as you're describing it, I'm shaking my head. That's not how I remember the album coming out. But I wasn't thirsting for it like you were.
Yeah, like me and all my friends, we were all on the phones, and I'm like, hey man, KLOS, they're gonna play the new Rush song, 7 a.m. tomorrow, and so we get to school and we're all talking about it. We're just like, I don't know. We still went over to the music store at lunch and bought it.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah.
Stood in line, and then we got home and we heard Analog Kid and stuff like that, some real rockers and stuff on it. And then we got inside Subdivisions and the whole thing of Teenage Alienation and went,
makes sense.
This makes a lot of sense, and started to realize that, of course, Rush was much more of a progressive band that was moving.
I think the reason Rush Rush was a super group for sure. Mm-hmm. The Holy Trinity, as they call them. But I think that the only reason they didn't cross over into mainstream hype was they never really had a number one hit. Yeah. They really didn't have something that hit the charts and was like, well, this is the greatest song ever. Everybody tries for that number one song. Rush really didn't have that kind of music.
No, they didn't. It's funny. Susan got me the Geddy Lee book for Christmas. And I finished that in 3 days. And, Rush did Rush, period.
From beginning to end.
Yeah. And
we're going to get off track on you, though. We're talking about Rush. People are going to forget we're talking here.
Well, to be fair,
ladies and gentlemen, we're still trying to do a radio show, but my friend and I just got lost on our own rabbit hole.
Rush is a lot more interesting than I am.
We can call this interview Rush from a Distance, overlooking the years. Well, I want to know what happened to you in high school and after high school.
After high school, here's
so
the
you
big
joined
thing.
the band with this guy.
This guy, yeah.
Okay.
And this is a big thing. I'm going from this rock thing, and I'm starting to embrace the new sounds. I'm starting to embrace samplers, electronic drums, sequencers, and a lot of the stuff. Starting to embrace things like Duran Duran and things like that. Starting to realize, okay, these guys are a real talent. They're really doing something interesting. And so this guy, Martin Bayless, Lumber City guy, invites me over to his place, and he's got this band together, and they're looking for a bass player. And they're making some really, really interesting music. Highly produced, big production stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I want to be a part of this. And the thing about that band is that it was, they worked. You rehearsed 3-4 nights a week.
And did that band have a name?
That band, I actually came up with the name, and the name of the band is Say So.
Say So, all right.
And it was spelled the French version of Say, C''EST, to make it really confusing. And I'm pretty sure Arista would have changed it to SAY, and I probably would have objected, but...
But they're a real band, real production, real rehearsals. They're serious.
Rehearsals, and we're working it hard.
Yeah.
It was a dedicated thing, and it's one of those things. I ended up taking a job over at the JBL factory, and that ended up, I'm thinking JBL, music industry, professional Pearl Audio, and stuff like that. No, it's a factory job. It's a demeaning factory job that I have to be there. So I'm getting there at 6 a.m. And
where was there a JBL factory? It was
Northridge.
In Northridge, there was an assembly plant there.
Yeah, on Balboa at the in Roscoe.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, their whole that was their headquarters and campus.
I did not know that.
Yeah, huge facility. And I had a job at the time. They were doing projection TVs, the big 3-gun RGB TVs.
Yeah.
And I was a convergence technician there. And the idea was you had to align the 3 beams so the images there. So you'd get the order from the bar or the venue that would have this thing, and you'd know what the distance was, and you'd set the thing up, and we'd set it up with a crosshatch generator and with little tiny.
I'm not going to call this a setback to your musical career, but it wasn't.
But the thing is, I'm there. I'm at 6 a.m. So I'm waking up at stupid hours, and then I'm going home and practicing, and then the band is getting together at a rehearsal hall that we're paying a lot of money for, and we're working that until midnight. And then I'm going home, get home, 12:30, 1 a.m., wake up at 5 a.m., go to the job. So I'm like, and that's,
yeah, but you're grinding it out, and it's a job, but you're okay. But see, the thing is for me, and I'm looking at this from an outside perspective, you didn't set your bass down, man. You were still touching it almost every day.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing, is the way everybody who's made it in the industry, this band is a good example of how people actually do make it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you knock on doors. You get the demos in people's hands. And the way, there are lots of ways to do that. I mean, if you're in Indiana and you're just sending it to the record company,
it's going to go on a big pile.
They got a big stack of them, and you got to do something that catches their eye. So we're doing.
Were you guys good?
Yeah, it was a really good band. And so what we do is we put our lead singer, Sean Glenn, and we get him a job at the Beverly Hills Hotel as a cabana boy. Because where's all the business being done?
Yeah.
At the pool, the Beverly. So Ahmet Erdogan is there. Clive Davis is there. So we have Atlantic and Arista.
You got some heavy hitters walking around.
There.
Yeah.
And Sean's delivering demos.
Wow.
And we're getting guys out at showcases, at the Roxy, at Madame Wong's, at all the big venues at the time.
So you didn't mention you were playing those gigs.
At this point, yeah. Now this is starting in 86 and 87.
You're out there playing.
Push. We're playing.
Okay.
We're playing on the Sunset Strip scene. And it's funny because we're, the Sunset Strip scene at this time, this is hair metal.
Yeah.
This is the absolute peak of freaking hair metal. And that's all there is. There's very few bands that are pushing into those venues that are outside of that. And we were one of them. And so we didn't get a big following, and it had fairly lukewarm receptions. Now we would go play at places like Madame Wong's West and things like that, which had much more of a K-rock audience to it. And that was more what we were into.
More receptive, bigger crowds, a little more loud on the other end. Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But, a gig's a gig. And
so you're playing those. Yeah. You're passing out demos to all the right people.
Yeah.
Where did it lead you? What'd you get?
Well, ultimately, they kept asking for more demos. And ultimately, it's that old thing. Don't hear a single. Don't hear a single. Don't hear a single. Well, there was another guy in the band, Mike Eady, a guitar player, who I'd played with in a previous band. And that band was the first band where I'd struck out on my own. In the old days, in the Los Angeles 80s scenes, the way bands got formed is you put an ad in the Recycler newspaper.
I remember that, Looking for. Yeah.
So I just looked for bands, auditioned for bands, and was in a few here and there. And, you grind it out for as long as you can until it fizzles out or until someone has a substance abuse problem or any number of stupid things that would happen. But there was this guy, Mike Eady, who I was friends with, really another mega talent,
Yeah.
And, if you're a mega talent, your phone rings.
Right.
Whether it's, it may not be the right guy calling you, but.
Yeah, but you notice
everybody's calling you.
Everybody knows who you are.
Yeah. So, and I had trouble getting him into Say So, because Say So was like, not really a guitar band. But what Mike brought to it was fantastic. But we're grinding away, and so it's like, Mike and I would start working on stuff separately.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically built the structure for this one tune that became the tune that Arista got interested in.
And was that through Say So, or is that on
this
your
is on Say So. This is with Say So.
This is not on the side.
This is not. No, we just kind of brought it to the band now.
Okay.
And
so you got one that they kind of raised an eyebrow
to.
They're
like, yeah. So Say So was like, oh yeah, this is a great song and whatever, and we're gonna do this. Now, we didn't do the lyrics or melody. Now, technically, lyrics and melody are the song, but we developed. There was. There's another aspect to music, what I call the lick that ate Chicago.
Okay.
The lick that ate Chicago. Day Tripper by the Beatles.
Yeah.
The opening, is that song without that lick?
No, not even close. It really
isn't.
No, it's not.
But from a publishing standpoint, lyrics and melody are it.
Now, you can, but because what you're describing, it's not enough. You can't just go in there with just that.
Yes, you can.
You can go in there with 20 seconds of lead. That's enough to get somebody interested.
Well, no. You're talking about no. I'm just saying as far as what constitutes publishing, which gets
okay.
A little bit,
all right. I'm tracking with you.
What constitutes what is a song?
All right.
A song is lyrics and melody.
Right.
But we came up with this thing that was very, very. The hook was in the lick, the lead lick.
Okay.
It's like Anthony Jackson, bass player on "For the Love of Money" by the OJs.
Yeah.
He does that.
You listen to him all day. All day. Yeah.
That's the hook.
Yeah.
There's still, it's not the hook. The money, 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 money.
Right.
That's the other hook. But he goes into the thing and he sees is D7 on the chart. And that's what he comes up with over the D7.
Okay.
He eventually got paid for that. And rightfully so.
All right.
It's, so Mike and I, we put this tune together and they add the lyrics and the melody. We record it.
Who did? Who added the lyrics and the melody? Say So or Arista?
Martin Bayless and Glenn.
Okay.
And Sean Glenn.
So the band.
Yeah.
All right.
And every band has a creative center, a creative core. To a certain extent, the band is that creative core and nobody else is. What is Led Zeppelin? Well, it's Jimmy Page. What is The Who? The Who is Pete Townsend.
Right.
What are the Beatles? John Lennon. You might argue Lennon and McCartney,
McCartney,
but it
right.
is John Lennon.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Well, you have a core. I would go along with that, but you also have a center to the core. You have a center to the core.
Yeah. Say So was Martin Bayless and Sean Glenn.
Okay.
You know, and everybody else is essentially a sideman. But we wrote these bed tracks with this great hook.
Okay.
And well, we get it to Arista, and Arista's like, we like this. And we like this. And this is going to be the MTV Pick Hit of the Week, second week of December, 1987.
No way.
Yeah, this is.
They're going to promote it right now.
They're going to promote it. You know, they had the MTV had this Pick Hit of the Week thing, and it's like, you get in there. It's it's.
What was the name of your song? What was it?
I can't even remember.
Needless to say, there's not a gold record hanging on your wall.
No, because it never came to fruition.
What?
I mean, we did. It's so funny. We went as far as I remember going to Malibu and having dinner at restaurants in Malibu with Arista execs, and we're talking about the video production and everything.
So wait a minute. So you bring them. Yeah. You guys work on this on the side. You bring it to the band. The band molds it together with some lyrics. Yeah. It makes it good. You guys take it to Arista, or I call it Arista.
They're on board. Yeah.
They're on board. You start having conversations.
And what happens is that Mike finds out that he or I are not on the publishing.
You guys wrote it. You guys brought
We didn't write the lyrics and melody.
No, that's not. No, I agree with that. But this all started with you.
I can advocate for both sides.
How could you not have your name on it? You brought this to the band.
Well, that's just it. And Mike was a lot more sophisticated in this than I was. And he says, this is where we're about to make the biggest mistakes of our lives. We need to take our ball and go home. And that's what we did.
So through all of these meetings, you end up being in Malibu. They're talking way out in front. They're talking video production. You guys haven't even got the single released yet. And they're building a campaign for this thing.
Yep.
And you decided to, what? Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm sure at some point someone said, put our name on there. And they said no?
Basically, Martin and Sean said, you didn't write the song. We wrote the song. They wrote the lyrics and the melody.
So it wasn't Arista, it was your band.
Yeah, no. Arista was fine,
So
I'm sure Arista would have found an entirely different set of ways to screw us. But no, I can't say that. Arista is traditionally a very good label. And Clive is always taking care of his artists.
Well, but I didn't know that was a dispute in the band. I always thought that the big record label messed with you guys.
That usually comes later. There's all sorts of bad things that can happen in this business.
But just okay. But
it's usually not even the label. It's usually management.
Here's what's bugging me about this. And straighten me out.
Yeah.
When you bring this track to your band, it's not like you found it on the side of the road and just picked it up and said, look what I found, here you go.
Yeah.
You developed it, you thought about it, you created it, you honed it to where you wanted it, you got a good, you worked on this thing and worked on this thing and worked on this thing, so this part of it is yours no matter what. You bring it to the band, and because they write the lyrics and add some melody to it. Now it's no longer yours.
Yes,
but not even a part of it is yours. I don't understand.
Well, that's how some bands work. It's funny because things like getting back to, we were talking about Queen earlier. You'll see this with a lot of bands. Fleetwood Mac, Queen, where you've got multiple songwriters in a band and everybody is gunning and competing to get their song on the record.
Yeah, on the album, right.
And if they can't do that, they'll do anything they can to get their song on the B-side. Because if the A-side sells, so does the B-side automatically.
Okay.
So,
you realize that half our audience doesn't know what an A and B side is? Like, what's an A and B side? Go look it up. If you guys leave the program right now, go look up what an A and B side is. But when you come back, you have to sit at the little kids table. You can't sit with the grown-ups. All right. So you're sitting there.
Yeah.
You're looking out over the world right now because it just takes one hit record to make a difference.
Yeah.
And you can't get it squared away with your bandmates.
Right. And it's just the industry is made of a very Machiavellian.
We can make up words here. Say whatever way you want.
That guy. Ways of doing business. And
what would have been the problem with just adding your name and continuing on? Why would they risk it?
That would take a piece. You
gotta get your first one. Who cares, man? You gotta get your first one to get going.
Yep.
Because
one, statistically, the odds are it's going to be your only one.
Okay, but how many did he get? Did he get if that didn't go through?
None. Yeah. He ends up getting a percentage of 0. So at the end of the day, so bad move on their part.
How'd you feel when you drove away that day when he told you to pick? When Mike said we got to stop right now?
Fine, at peace.
You were okay with it.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of things that happen. There's with every band, and that is the amount of work that you put into that first record is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's so many bands that just dissolve after that first record, man. It's just that where there's so much work, and then all of a sudden you have to do a follow-up, and there was no time to do the work. You might have 5 years into that first record, and then you've got 9 months into the second one.
Yeah, and now there's expectations.
Yeah, there's expectations.
Yeah.
And there's also just simply, it can't be as good because
don't have the heart into it. You can't. Yeah. You can't feel your way through it. Make all the changes in 9 months. You can't. Yeah. That's just all right. Yeah. So,
and and here's the thing: you look at that music, and it was like I said, it was ultimately it was Duran Duran, a day late and a dollar short, is what that band was. And I look at that. You look at things like what happened to later on, like what happened to things like Milli Vanilli and whatever. Yeah. I look at Say So as the best thing that never happened.
Yeah, but I'm frustrated right now. I mean, this is 40 years later. I'm frustrated. I'm mad. But if you look back, do you still think you made the right decision? Or
absolutely.
Really, to this day?
Absolutely. Like I said, it's the best thing that never happened to me.
So if you why would you say that? Why wouldn't you have taken? You still could have turned out who you are.
Well, no, because one, there's a lot of other things. It's like you go into it, you're not in control of your life. You're not in control of your image. You're not in control. So you're going to be, you're going to have all these people in the video, people creating this image and doing all these things for you. And by 1992, I would have been a laughingstock. Well, yeah,
times change.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah,
and it's funny, and it's like I would have been a laughingstock from 1992 to about 2008, when suddenly the 80s were kind of quasi cool again.
Yeah,
and so it's one of those things where it's like, who knows? I could have committed suicide. I could have done all sorts of all sorts of bad things.
But I just feel like from what I know of you now, we've been friends for all these years. And I'm stupid. I'm naive looking back on this, but I would have said, God damn it, you deserved something out of that. Take your whole life and point back in that and go, give him that moment. He deserved. That's how I feel. I know I don't have to live it out. I don't have to live under the scrutiny that you would have had to.
Yeah.
But I feel bad that stuff like that happens, and there's some music and that never got heard. Yeah. And there's some money that could have been exchanged that never happened.
Yeah.
But I get being late on something too. I do.
Then again, in the wake of it, instead of crashing and burning personally through the process, I just kind of pick up and move to the next thing. I reunite with Jack Mandel. Uber talent. Now. Jack has he's built a studio in his house, and this is the Andesol house, which you know about.
Yeah,
the famous Andesol house.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that we've built the studio, and it's not with any permits. It's not decode. There's nothing about it. And Jack's mom wanted to sell the house and couldn't. So she moved to Malibu, and as far as I know, she gave us the house. I think I paid like $100 a month rent to live there. But you had your studio, man. Who cares?
The studio, yeah.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was another guy, a producer and engineer out of New York named Roger Summers, who moved to the West Coast. And he wanted to get out of that end of it and actually be an artist, be a singer and stuff like that. And there was this talented group of kids in Granada Hills that included Jack Mandel, Scott Pollock on bass, and Danny Lux on drums. And Danny's one of the biggest television composers of all time.
Really?
Super talented man. But he was just, he was a drummer back then, and him and Scott and Jack had this band Freelance, and this guy Roger came in and went, wow, these kids, Roger's like 26, 27, 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
17 years old. And he sees their talent, and he's like, okay, they've got this studio now. Roger's working at his day job is Everything Audio in Burbank, big outfitter of studios. I mean, he's selling the big Otari and Studer, $80,000 tape machines and the $250,000 SSL consoles to studios. That's his gig. He's an engineer. He's the real deal.
A real engineer.
And so he comes in, molds these guys, and one of the things that he does is disciplines them musically, especially Jack. Jack was a little bit on the sloppy side. He would sit down with Jack and, to record a solo on this one song, he had Jack deconstruct the solo and he started out with that, taking the guitar away from Jack and just putting a click at 44 beats per minute and having Jack tap his foot at 44 beats per minute, which is an incredibly slow tempo. And, the idea is to cancel out the click. But that's you taking him way back, to the beginning of it. We're starting here. Yeah, but then he takes the solo, which he's composed, and he's like, okay, you're going to start playing this solo at 44 beats per minute. So it's like making sure every bend is in pitch, back to pitch, in pitch, back to pitch, takes us more. And at the end of that process, which is months. Before Roger allowed him to cut this solo, Jack was a virtuoso. Now he had all this music and stuff that was inside him, and he could execute it in the most flawless manner possible.
He's got discipline, like you said. That's the right word, yeah.
And and then suddenly everybody starts to notice. Jack already was noticed as a guitar player in town, but now after
what are the chances that all these people fall together in just the right places to help, to do these things? That's incredible. Yeah. Absolutely.
But I'm there and I'm like looking over my shoulder and I'm learning a thing or two about engineering. At the time, Jack and Scott become Christians, and they don't want anything to do with secular music anymore. And, it's about the same time I really became a real Christian. I mean, I'd kind of grown up in it a little bit back in Florida with my dad, but now
more practicing.
Yeah. Now it's like, now we're all going to the same church and stuff like that. And, and we're kind of like, this rock stardom or whatever isn't important.
Just about 87, 88?
This is 88, 89 at this point. 87, December 87 was the end of Say So. 88, rolling into that now.
Okay. What church did you guys all go to?
We started out at a place called Covenant Presbyterian in Chatsworth. No, actually, we ended up there. I'm sorry. We started at Grace Community.
Grace Community. That's one of the places. And
that's where we met Sharavalo.
Right. That's one of the places that our lives began to cross.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sharavalo ended up, for those of you who don't know, he ended up being the lead singer for One in Rome, or One in Rome 2, as they say. So that was, he pursued music for a long time too.
Yeah. And, Sharavalo was a mega talent. What a singer he became, and his ability to harmonize and create and as a lyricist and, as a thinker, he got
a keyboard. I want to say he got a keyboard when John Travel was one of my better friends growing up and spending it at my house or his house all the time. And he got a keyboard. I want to say he was like 14 or 15. And to me, it was annoying because it's like with you always had to have your bass in your hand. It just was, you had to have that feel all the time. That's all he wanted to do. We'd go to people's houses to go do stuff. If there was a piano, he went over to it. Yep. He never stopped with that. You guys that are really into you never stop. Yeah. It's like an instinct you gravitate towards it, and he did. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I remember actually one summer after I graduated, we went to go visit my aunt in Denver, and I have a bunch of cousins and stuff out there. My aunt's has two things. She's got a Hammond organ in her basement. She's got a pool table.
Right.
All the cousins and stuff. Everyone wants to go play pool and stuff. And I'm locked myself in this room with this organ. And
It's uncanny what you guys do with that.
Yeah.
And you're fine with it. You're fine if everybody leaves you alone. I dig that. I do. I dig that a lot.
And, I didn't have any keyboard shops or didn't own a keyboard back home. I'm like, oh, cool. I got this. Let's learn how to make music on this.
Wow.
And,
which was against the grain for you. You were the analytics.
Yeah.
But by then, there's things that
absolutely.
had to open up inside you, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And then even more so, again, being exposed to Roger Summers in particular, just because everything that he was teaching Jack about rhythm and time and pocket and groove, I was picking that up. The other thing that happened that year is I went to work for a shop called the Bass Center, which was America's first bass guitar only shop.
Really? Far out.
Had a great mentor there by the name of Alan Morgan. And Alan came from England, and he had started the Bass Center in England, and he had a company called, I don't know if he started the Bass Center. He had a company called Soundwave, which was a PA hire company, and they started building dedicated bass amps out of Soundwave, and those were called Trace Elliott. So he was the creator of Trace Elliott amplifiers, and then around 84, 85, he comes to the United States to start distributing them. Has an office out in Calabasas, which the distribution offices, and then the Soundwave in England eventually becomes the Bass Center, and then Trace Elliott distribution in the U.S. eventually becomes the Bass Center LA. So you have the Bass Center London, the Bass Center Los Angeles.
So there you are.
And now I'm surrounded by all the greatest bass players in the world.
Wow.
Everybody shops there, and it became a hang. We had Abraham Laboreal, Nathan East, just everybody, every great.
Because it was the only spot, and it was serious.
Yeah.
It was not a.
Oh yeah,
it was a serious place to go.
Yeah, because you would go to an ordinary guitar center, guitar store, and they would have the Fender bass. They would have maybe a Rickenbacker, and maybe on the high end they might have an Alembic or something like that. We had everything. We had Tobias, we had Ken Smith, we had Federa. Of course, we had Fenders, we had Music Mans, we had all that, and then we were bringing Status basses in from the UK. We brought Warwick basses in. We established Warwick.
Who came in there that you recognized? I mean, that was just. I mean, there had to have been, like you said, everybody had to come there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was fun. And then I would set up guys' instruments and stuff. And then, I had actually, I had a Guitar Center job at Guitar Center Hollywood just prior to that, just for a few months.
Yeah.
Started there that summer, and I got hired at the door as the guy who checks receipts. Okay.
Oh well.
And they gave me that, and they gave me an aluminum baseball bat. Because in those days, you could go after a shoplifter.
Yeah, no shit.
And, but one of the things, I met Matt and Gunnar Nelson that summer at Guitar Center, and they had just gotten signed to Geffen, and by John Kolodner. And so I became Matt Nelson's bass tech, and worked on their After the Rain record, which went on to sell millions and millions. And in that, through that, and then also through some of the other guys I had met at the Bass Center, I was plugged into the LA studio scene.
And you'd kind of been picking up the engineering all this time.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I'd started doing time in every major studio in LA. It's funny, I was still a bass tech, but there was one time we were doing now the Nelson record was recorded twice. When Kolodner first signed him, it's like, okay, I'm going to put you with my A-list guy. I'm going to put you with, Bob Rock. And at the time, I forget that. I don't know if he had just done the Metallica record or if that came after. I think it's,
right about that time.
Yeah. And Matt and Gunnar wanted nothing to do with it. They had zero chemistry. They wanted to do the record with Mark Tanner, who they'd recorded the demos with. Now, I had the demos, and the thing about, Matt and Gunnar, they had the same Fostex E16 half-inch multi-track tape recorder that we had over at Jack's studio.
Yeah.
And but I heard what they could do with it, and if you listen to the After the Rain demos, it sounds like across like the Eagles in Boston, just beautiful. And so they start doing this record with Bob Rock, and we're doing it at 1-on-1 in Lancashire, big beautiful room. And I remember this is the big self-indulgent days, and I remember like an 8-hour day dedicated to kick drum, where they've got their drummer Bobby Rock, not to be confused, no relation.
Yeah,
he's out there doing, when you're getting a sound for a record, you have the drummer sit there and just play the kick drum, quarter notes.
Wow.
And then they move the mics, and then they
You're
come to the
kidding me.
preamp, and you're doing the EQ and the compression, and then they move the mic a little bit more. That's like an 8-hour day, though.
You
And then
got to
they're
be
setting
kidding me.
up-
That can't be a real story.
Yeah, no, and then they're setting up these 21-inch subwoofers in the room and re-micing them. And it was the most ridiculous thing. And the thing that I remember I thought it was odd is that they were cutting to I think a Mitsubishi 32-track digital machine and then doing the safeties on the 2-inch 24s. And I'm like, now I'm a new guy and I don't pretend to know anything, but that's backwards.
Right.
And I'm biting my tongue the whole time. I'm just like, that's no.
But how
You
can
cut
you
to
spend-
24 to get the sound of the tape, then you move it to digital as a safety.
How can you make that? Who would spend that much money in recording studio time and personnel for 8 hours of a guy hitting his floor pedal? I don't understand. That's ridiculous.
It was the 80s. The 80s was ridiculous.
I mean, I'm just a dumb mechanic in the middle of the desert, and I'd be like, dude, somebody fucking play the drums, man. Let's just record you playing the drums.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of technical things you do have to do.
I get it, but
you
my
have
God.
to make sure everything's in phase and nothing's interacting the wrong way. But 8 hours on kick drum is absurd.
Well, I couldn't do it. I couldn't get there. So,
but I remember just sitting there in the lounge in the game room and listening to the boom through the wall going. Really?
For 8 hours. All right.
And,
so now you got
So they finished the record.
Yeah.
They finished the record, and they invite
This
me
is
over.
Nelson's second
This is
cut.
Nelson, Matt and Gunnar Nelson. They invite me over to hear the mix, and it's one of these things. I'm still young. I'm still pretty shy, and I'm have the sense to be slow with an opinion.
Okay. So we did learn some caution eventually.
Yeah,
Good. All right. From our BG days of getting our ass kicked, we've learned to be, all right, I'm with you.
So, and I'm listening to the record, and I remember it just kind of washing over me, having zero impact. And, and Gunnar looks at me and goes, yeah, we were underwhelmed. Well, they went back and got another, $250,000 or whatever from Geffen and convinced them to let Mark Tanner do the record. And we cut the entire record a second time. Now, the thing is, I understand Kolodner wanting, this is Bob Rock's my boy. He did the multi-platinum Metallica
one,
or
right?
Maybe Motley Crue. I don't know what all those credits are. And you got to play it safe.
Sure.
You got to put there's a new A-Arist with a new A production team, and you gotta play it smart.
But they also have to music. You guys got to jive.
The thing is that Mark Tanner was hardly a non-entity. Because I think he did. I think he did Wilson Phillips.
So he was not. He's not a B player.
No. So he's the real deal. But they do the record, and I remember, Mark Tanner and Kolodner didn't get along at all for obvious reasons. Now Kolodner you got to see him at the time. Kolodner walks around looking exactly like John Lennon on the Abbey Road back cover.
Really?
He's got the long hair, the specs, the white suit. He's like that everywhere. And he's always got some young girl on his arm.
Of course.
But when I say young, I mean and he comes in the studio, we're like, is that his daughter? I don't know. She's underage. And quite honestly, we're all sitting there and looking at this and we're all a little bit creeped out.
Yeah.
And Kolodner comes into the studio and I forgot what they're cutting at the time, but it's over at Cherokee. Great place on Fairfax. No longer there, like many of the great rooms in LA. And Konodner's like, I think the guitars are too loud. Now, this is not a mix session. This is a tracking session, And Kolodner knows this. He's just given Tanner.
You just got to
a
say
lot of heat.
something.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that happens in everywhere. Somebody got to
So,
come in and say something.
You know, so Tanner gets up and she's like, I'm out. And he looks at me and he's like,
You do it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, of course, you know, I'm sitting here and this is probably a Neve console and I don't really know how to run this thing. But we have the second engineer there, and the second engineer at this place is just, I wish I could remember his name. He was so good. Big personality. But he's sitting there, most of the time for Tanner, he's the tape op and the guy running the patch bay and everything like that. But I'm just sitting there and now, I've designed and built Matt's bass rig. It's a huge Trace Elliott rig. And, Matt's got all sorts of great basses. He's got a bunch of, he's got this really nice custom made Jackson. He's got a whole bunch of Warwicks. And he was also partial to the Steinbergers at the time, which was not a popular bass, but just a great sounding bass. It usually sits in the mix really well. And nice, very big, fat carbon graphite bass and everything. And, but it has a really hot output. And he's going into this, he decides he's going to plug into this one input on the amp. That's what they call a flat response valve preamp. And it's overdriving the hell out of it, but not in like a cool way. They're like great overdrive bass sounds that you hear on like from Geddy Lee and stuff like that. John Entwistle. And this isn't it. This is garbled. It's and I'm sitting there and like for the first time, now Matt and Gunnar, they like Yes Men. And I'm like, this is the first time I'm like a no man.
But you got to say something. You got to go, dude, this is a little fucked up.
And I'm shut down. I'm just like, man, this isn't it. But they go forth. They cut the tune that way. For my trouble.
Don't tell me. What? If I hear you got fired, I'm going to be pissed.
No. It's worse than getting fired.
What?
The record goes to mix. And it's mixed up like I think Dave Thoner was the mix engineer, and he's got a place up in the Laurel Canyon area, up off of like Lookout Mountain or something like that, in some canyon. It's like one of these houses that's way up on the hill.
Sure.
And there's these switchbacks of stairs that you have to go up to get it. And of course Thoner gets this, and he hears that bass, and he's like, I can't fucking use this.
So he agreed with you.
Yeah.
But he could do something about it. He could just go, I'm taking this shit out.
But he's like, so I get this call, you can't use that. So Matt's yelling at me about this bass tone. And the next thing I know is that I'm going to Thoner's house with Matt's bass rig, and we're dragging this thing up the stairs for Matt to recut this one tune.
Didn't you? I hope you gave everybody the biggest fat I told you so. The whole way.
Oh, no. I'm smarter than that.
Oh, for God's sake. We wouldn't be carrying this shit up the switchbacks if you fucking listen to me.
But that's the point where it's like, it's kind of like the first key point where it's like going, okay, I might know what I'm doing.
Well,
because I'm insecure as hell, and I'm just, I generally go with my instincts, and my instincts have served me right, but,
So you get
I was very slow to die on any particular hill. So,
sure, but let me recapture now. So now you're moving. You've been in the music industry. You've been in a lot of different aspects and working in it, like at the store, the bass store, and you're doing stuff. And now you're engineering. You're getting the taste of that at a top level.
Yeah.
Where did you go next?
Well, it's funny because I didn't, and that was a big problem. There was a lot going on. First of all, I was going to go out on the road with Matt. As his bass tech, and during the first part of the tour, which was doing nothing but we were doing Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve Ball, we were doing the Billboard Music Awards, we were doing like a Geffen Records Christmas party and stuff, and all these things, and I did all those gigs,
right?
And then I was supposed to go out, it's funny that winter, like '91, I think there was a bit of a recession, a whole bunch of tours got canceled, got pushed off to spring, and in that time. It's funny, I had met Susan in 1990.
Susan is his beautiful and wonderful wife, and I do love her way more than I love Eric, just so you guys know.
And, one of the things about, I hated the rock and roll business. I hated the excesses. I hated the drugs, the whole everything, all the trappings of it. I was not interested in. I didn't have any of those vices.
You've been very vocal about that for as long as I've known you. You've been like, that is not me. I'm just not that. I was in it for the music.
And, I loved the creative aspect. I love being around creatives in that regard until it started getting stupid. Now, we're doing the Billboard Music Awards show. And, a lot of the road guys, a lot of their crew were just, veterans. They're hired on.
Right.
And these guys are hardcore. And they were like, and they start to notice I'm not partaking in anything. And, we're out in the trailer one day, and one of the guys says, so you're not going to do anything. He goes, well, some point while we're out on the road, you're going to do something if we have to hold it down and shoot it in you. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What choice do you have at that point?
Yeah.
Now, were you dating Susan? You hadn't gotten married yet.
No, we were dating, and yeah. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to go out and chase this thing on the road and do anything. I really wanted to.
Not that it matters, but wasn't she working for BAM magazine?
Yeah, and now here's the best
because
part.
that was a big magazine when I was growing up.
BAM was a West Coast Rolling Stone.
Yeah,
it was big and influential, and this is kind of a thing. And this is where it's like, Susan is a nice girl, but you would never know it because she works at BAM magazine, and she's got this jet black hair at the time. Total rock and roll chick.
Yeah.
And so I'm conflicted in this first year of dating because she's trying to be cool and come off as this rock and roll, but she's actually a nice girl from Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So she's selling herself to me completely wrong. And so we're a little bit at loggerheads about that. And here's the best part. We're going to bring this back. We're like all this stuff about the Bee Gees earlier.
Yeah. All right.
Me getting my ass kicked for liking the Bee Gees. Well, I was getting my ass kicked by all the Led Zeppelin kids and stuff like that. So Susan's working at BAM magazine, and I can't tell the difference between her and those Led Zeppelin kids that kicked my ass. Our second date, we go see a movie. We're going to go see My Blue Heaven with Steve Martin.
Yeah.
And we're driving back around the 118, and I'm just like surfing on the radio there and scanning, and then it gets to K Earth, and I think it's playing I Gotta Get a Message to You by the Bee Gees from like about 1970, 71.
Right.
Way before the disco era. And it paused there, then it goes on, and I'm like,
well, she didn't punch you.
Well, so. No. Here's where I decided to lay my cards on the table. I flip back and I go, boom, I put it back on K Earth, and they're playing the Bee Gees, and I look at her and I go, I like the Bee Gees. Deal with it.
Wow, just
like that, yeah. And she's like, "Oh, I love the Bee Gees." Now I'm thinking, okay, I'm thinking this is second date good behavior.
Oh, yeah, like, she's just getting along with you.
I'm just, she just likes me.
Hold on, but she likes you, so even if she was lying, that was still good for you.
No, but it gets better.
All right.
Okay. I go, okay. You like the Bee Gees, huh?
Oh, please don't tell me you tested her.
No, who produced and engineered the 1975 main course record?
Oh my, you did. You went right at her. I can't believe. Ow.
She looks at me and she goes, Carl Richardson and Albie Galutin.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Knocks it out of the park.
You know what? I would have been your guardian angel going, shut the fuck up. Don't ask her that. Don't put her on the spot.
Yep.
Second date, don't do that. And you did it anyway.
I did it anyway. And it becomes this huge bonding moment for us.
Great story, man. I love that.
Yeah. And not only that, we talk about, I moved back. I talk about the whole kidnapping, and I moved back here in 79. I get back here in 79. Bee Gees are playing Dodger Stadium.
Wow.
And my parents don't give me tickets. And she goes, oh, I saw that tour. She saw it at in Boston.
Yeah.
She's got this little snapshot of the back of Barbara Gibb's head, their mom. She's sitting behind Barbara Gibb.
See this head of hair?
Like at her Boston Gardens.
Oh my God.
So this turns out to be like a big bonding point for us. And
well, I will tell you, she's wonderful. Your wife is absolutely wonderful. The history that she's got when she was sharing some stuff when you guys were with Highway Down and they're out here doing some stuff here in town. just a little tidbits that you told me about being around the rock and roll from a magazine, you know, where they do interviews or photo shoots or pictures and stuff. That was fascinating also. I mean, it was really you met with the right girl because you both had a similar background in that kind of area. You both loved music. You both had, and you guys fit. You guys still fit to this day. That's good stuff, man. But I would have never told you as your wingman. I would have gone, shut the fuck up, dude. She just liked it. Don't test her on this. What if she fails? She's going to want to get out of the car right now. What a risk you ran there.
Yeah, well.
My God, you're lucky she's wonderful. You really are. Yeah. Well, so, you know, you go through all this stuff now, and then you at some point you get into I'm assuming the next several years you're doing engineering for different people.
No. Well, that's a lot. I did. It's interesting. I got it's a very part-time gig, teching for John Entwistle of the Who. You know,
of the Who,
of one of the most legendary bass players of all time, and I'm doing this somewhat reluctantly.
Why?
Partially because I don't like celebrities.
But it's a job,
I don't
man.
like prima donnas.
Oh, and this guy
also,
was?
I'm young. I'm 2 years off of a record deal gone bad. So I'm thinking, you know, I'm slightly higher. I'm looking at him as like possibly a house band, which is fucking stupid. It is funny because I'm a huge Entwistle fan from being a little kid. I remember watching the Who's final concert at Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens on pay-per-view in 1982 or whatever that is, 83. But, you know, and watching Entwistle, and I've been playing bass for a year, and I'm like, okay, this guy's it. And
but what you said in the beginning right there was that you're 2 years off of a bad record deal. Yeah, you're a little salty. You're still young. You got ideas.
Now the Who is doing another. They've done their first of the 19 comeback tours. And at the end of that, John takes a gig as the house bass player at the China Club in Hollywood. And he only does the last set. And I think like a lot of the house band, I'm looking at it back now, and it's because it's people I've worked with since, and I don't think I've not asked them this. A lot of it was like members of Bonnie Raitt's band. Certainly the bass player was the house bass player, and names escape me because that part of the brain that holds names is
non-functional,
very defective. It'll
now see if you'd actually gone on tour and taken all those drugs, you'd have been dialed in, but you wouldn't do it.
So, anyways, he does the first three sets. Then Entwistle comes in as the celebrity guy who does the closing set, and I built his rig for the China Club gig and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and then I had a chance to do a whole bunch of stuff with him. He had like his bass rig, even though it's based in the U.S., is still a 220 rig. And so any gear he buys in the U.S., but that's 117 volts, he has to have rewired, have the transformers retapped for 220 or whatever. So I had to do that on a bunch of gear and stuff
now,
like that.
This is all local, like California. You didn't go on tour, right?
No. I didn't. Just teched for him locally.
Okay.
But he was doing that one band with Zach Starkey and I think Skunk Baxter and stuff, and they're out at Mates in North Hollywood rehearsing, and and Entwistle has the most amazing bass rig in the history of bass rigs, bar none. And it's something that they try and capture on record, and unless you've stood in front of it, it just can't be described. It's an experience. It's a visceral experience to be in front of this thing.
So even though he's a celebrity, he knows his shit.
Oh yeah. He is an absolute outlier in every imaginable way. Well, one of the funnest things I got to do a series of clinics with him in Las Vegas. Spent about 4 or 5 days in Las Vegas with him. And this is sort of a thing where I'm with Trace Elliott, and Trace Elliott owes this music dealer in Las Vegas, kind of a make good on something that they screwed up. And somehow that make good involves bringing them the head of John Entwistle on a platter.
Wow.
And this is where this is the thing where it finally hit me on the head that John Entwistle that I've been working with is John Entwistle of the fucking Who. Wow. This guy who I'm casual with, I call on the phone, he calls me, and And his although mainly his sidekick Cy Langston was mainly the real main contact, but
Yeah.
John would call me fairly regularly. But so I go out there with him and we do the clinic, and of course this dealer has John Entwistle, and he's going to milk this for all he can. So after the clinic, he takes us out to dinner, very, very nice steak restaurant in Vegas. And the thing that I'm learning about John Entwistle is how much of a recognizable public figure he is, which I didn't expect.
Well, because he's the bass player,
Yeah, exactly.
You're not a fan of the band until you know the bass player's name.
The thing about John is that he's 6 foot something. He's a very imposing figure, and he dresses to the nines.
Really?
And you see interviews with Pete and with John. You always talk about how everybody in the stage is flailing for attention, whereas John's way of getting attention was standing still, and his other way of getting attention is clothes. He's shy. He's the introvert extrovert, which I can completely relate with. So he goes out there and he's got this denim jacket with the big spider web riveted on the back and the big Boris the Spider, big sterling silver tarantula thing here, big cowboy boots, and just, he's dressed very expensively, very not, typical street clothes and stuff like that. And he had two ways of dealing with people depending on how they approached him. If they're like, you'd have people all day long approaching him, are you somebody famous? And he'd be like, no, you're thinking of somebody else. If you said, hey, are you John Entwistle? He'd stop, chat, sign an autograph, whatever. And because I'm with him for like 4 days. So not only are we doing these dealers things, we're at the shopping mall. We're doing all these crazy things. So, and we're having the steak dinner, and the waiter is looking at him and examining him, trying to figure out who he is. And he's like, are you somebody famous? And he gives the usual, no, you're somebody else. Well, I get up to go to the restroom, and I see the waiter at the bus station doing something, and I go, look, he doesn't want anybody to know this, but I go, that's Peter Frampton. Now, John Entwistle is like 3 feet taller than Peter Frampton.
Oh my God.
So he comes with our bill and he's like, Mr. Frampton, can I have your autograph?
Oh my God.
And Entwistle he's infuriated. He's like, well, what makes you think I'm that little shit? So I don't know if there's like history with him and Frampton, but he seemed to have a low opinion of Peter Frampton.
Didn't have a lot of respect for that guy at the time.
So, and I'm just trying to, and I'm holding it on, and Entwistle kind of knows me at this point. He thinks, you did this.
You said.
Oh, the other thing about Entwistle is, Entwistle drinks 24/7. Functioning alcoholic. He's comes off very straight, but we're in the Bellagio. I don't know where we stayed. I don't know if the Bellagio even existed then. It was very much in the old part of Vegas. This is 92.
Okay.
And Vegas looks, that whole main part of the strip doesn't even exist yet.
Just coming to fruition then, yeah.
So I'm there, and he's like, here's Eric. I notice you don't drink. And I go, yeah, after about 3 beers, I can't hear the difference between a 1 and a 4 chord. And he's like, oh, you Americans with your 1-4-5. I didn't understand. Remember when I first met you, I was doing that China Club gig. And he goes, that fucking keyboard player. He'd always be calling the changes. He'd be doing, flash that. I don't have, Pete would just say, G, C, D, F, B flat. He would just, call the changes. Okay. And then it's kind of like going, and every time he said Pete, I'm like going, I was like, wait, like Pete Townsend.
Pete Townsend.
It's dawning on me. There. So, well, later on, after the steak dinner, this dealer, he's going to bring John Entwistle out to this bar to sit in with this band that's one of his biggest customers. And it's just a bar band.
Still, this is a big payback here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cashing in on the moment.
And this place is such a dive, the band plays in the parking lot.
Oh, my God.
Now, I'm interested in this because I've never seen Entwistle in an uncontrolled situation. And it's one of these things where it's like, everybody has these suspicions about rock stars about, can they hang with the jam?
Yeah.
Quite honestly, yes, freaking all of them can. They're all really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I would have expected.
And so we go out there and he plays with this band and he's killing it. I mean, it was something that was jaw-droppingly good. But we get back in the rental car.
Because he hasn't rehearsed with those guys.
No, not at all.
This is
Doesn't
just
even
get
know
in
these
and play.
guys, yeah.
Wow, yeah.
And we get back in the rental car. We're going back to the hotel. And I go, well, how do you think that went? And he goes, well, he's like, I told him what we talked about earlier. I just shout it out, GCD. I mean, what he doesn't realize, it's a fucking live situation. There's all this fucking racket. You can't hear the consonants. All I'm hearing him saying is, he's saying GCD. All I'm hearing is EEE. And he goes, Pete was unambiguous. He goes, giraffe, caterpillar, duck-billed platypus. And that is, and that's just such an English way to call out chords.
Yeah, for sure. But he was very insistent that he knew what was going on. It's like, I can't even get through to you guys. Fuck. That's great.
So that was the John Entwistle experience.
Wow.
And
that's amazing. Good stories, man.
Yeah.
Good times hanging out.
Yeah.
So you go through all this for years now? What is it? This is the mid-90s.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I get at that, I'm working jobs with Gibson and Trace Elliott as a product specialist. After the road debacles, and I'm doing that, and I like that. That's good. And Susan and I are running into problems generated almost entirely by me, and we break up, and I send her back to Rhode Island.
Wow.
And she goes back to Rhode Island, and I just start spiraling. So then I become somewhat non-functional at work, and I lose this great job with Trace Elliott. And this is after, it's funny because I one at the Bass Center, I had sold almost like 1/3 of all Trace Elliott imported into the U.S. So I was really good with the company.
Yeah.
And then I'm working with Command, their U.S. distribution. And then like my first NAMM show with them, I managed to sell like $2.1 million in stuff in that 3 days, which is more than they sold the entire previous year.
Wow.
So I'm doing really well. And then it's just, the Susan thing's happening. And, so I kind of crash and burn, end up back at my parents' place. And I'm just, Jack Mandela's moved to South Carolina with his family. And I got nothing going on here. I take some rep jobs in the music industry with bass amps and stuff like that, and don't really get back into engineering until about 99. An old Bass Center customer calls me. He's the worship leader for a big mega church out in Simi Valley. His name's Mike Brady, and he's a great bass player. He's played, back with Loggins and Messina, with Captain Tennille, with Al Jarreau. He's been a vocal arranger for the Beach Boys. Great musician, and now he's the worship leader at this church. And he hires me there, and
to do engineering out there. Sound.
So I'm the technical director at this big church.
Okay.
And that's finally where I really dove in big into engineering and mixing and things like that.
Well, you even got to a point when I called you a couple times over the past few years, and you were designing and building for churches their whole sound system and installing it.
Yes, and
oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, so just to go back over that stuff, you started doing engineering, and you were really a bass specialist. You did for a lot of the big names. You took care of all their gear, you set it up, and you tweaked it how everyone wanted it. Now, you'd mentioned before you did something. What was the guy with Arsenio Hall? I remember the show.
The Arsenio Hall show. John B. Williams was the bass player in the house band on that show, and he was just a sweetheart of a guy. And of course, he had a Warwick artist deal. And so, he had a bunch of Warwick basses, and, I was very, from the Bass Center into that Trace Elliott Warwick ecosystem.
Yeah. So
I was kind of the on-call guy for that. So, so I designed and built his rig for the show, which included an MP11 preamp, which was this sort of MIDI programmable preamp, and I had set up all the gain staging and EQing for each individual instrument for him on that. And so each bass had a special preset and that optimized for the way he played and whatnot. And one of the funny things is that the Arsenio Hall show is that what people don't know, of course, it had all the Emmys for broadcast sound.
Really?
And I wish I knew the house engineer's name on that, because he was really good, but he was a classic grumpy sound engineer. Because one, he was very, very concerned with his reputation and those Emmys, and rightfully so. And so it's funny because they'd go there if I repaired a bass or done something like that and then brought it back to him. I'd show up there and the house band would start like rehearsing before the show.
Right.
And, John B wouldn't be there. And occasionally there were a couple stints where it's like, I played bass for the rehearsals.
Yeah.
But one of those times in particular, I remember I just grabbed one of the basses and I picked the wrong preset. And, okay, it sounded a little off. I didn't really notice it. But then the engineer comes out of the booth and he walks across the stage floor and he looks at me and he's just giving me this glaring look. He's looking at me. He goes, "What is this shit?" And I'm like, and I look down at the bed. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, wrong preset." And he goes back.
But he knew?
Yeah, it just didn't sound right. I mean, but they said this is one of these rare moments of affirmation that possibly I might know what I'm doing. Because he goes back to the booth. I've corrected the preset and I'm playing, just playing the parts, the rehearsal with the house band. And he comes back at me and he comes out and he looks at me and he goes,
Well, it sounds like from that guy, that was the most you were going to get.
Well, but that to me, it was like,
well, I know,
it was relief. It was affirmation. It was,
yeah, but it wouldn't have surprised me if somebody said, that's all he gives. You just got the top shelf, right? That was it.
Yeah.
He didn't offer anything bigger than that.
Yeah.
Those guys. Well, so you do all this stuff. I know when I talked to you a few years back, you were traveling the country as an engineer for Bostix.
Yeah. I mean, I was, I did a lot of I did Bohemian Queen and some of the better tribute bands. And, the neat thing about that is that when that's, there's huge audiences for them.
Sure.
So you go out and you play really nice venues. You play, Civic Arts Plazas, you play medium-sized theaters, 750 to 1,500 capacity.
Right.
And then when you do festivals, sometimes those can be 5,000, 10,000,
sure.
30,000. And there's good money on them now. I mean, this is where you make money as a musician now.
Well, you and I were talking about that over lunch, talking about how they don't really nobody buys. There was one year somebody came out and said there wasn't one gold album sold last year. And I thought, how could there not be a gold album sold? It's not even platinum or double platinum. Yeah. It's like, because nobody buys music.
Right.
Nobody, one person downloads it and then tries to share it with everybody. Yeah. I get that now, but boy, that sure shakes me to the core of how music used to be when I was a kid.
I'm a stupid sucker. I buy my music. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you thinking? Well, you know what? My son, everybody knows him as the kid or Gen Z kid. He's into vinyl now, and that's what he asks for Christmas and his birthday. That's what he spends some of his dollars on. He wants a collection of vinyl. He wants to hold it in your hand. I saw him the other day. He goes, "This is the coolest thing ever." He pulled apart an album, pulled out the sleeve. He goes, "There's all this stuff written on the inside. There's stuff there's about what they did, and there's pictures and how they made the song and what it has to do with." He goes, "I can sit and listen to the album and read this jacket 13 times."
That's beautiful, and that is we're going to tie this back into me and Susan.
Yeah.
On that second date, I'm like, okay, who produced and engineered Main Course in 1975? And she knew it because she immersed herself in the liner notes in the 70s. We all did.
Yeah.
And, and the fun thing about it is like you would see things like, you'd start to see a lot of names over and over, like guitar players.
Yeah.
You'd see, Ray Parker Jr. once told me that, from 1974 to 1979, him, Dean Parks, and Lee Rittenauer were doing 5 sessions a day, 5 days a week, making money hand over fist. And so you'd always see their names on all the liner notes.
Wow.
And
well, so let's move on with you. So you go do all this stuff. We talked a little bit about Highway Down and how you had a little bit of a push there. Good music on a good CD, and people, you had a trunk load of them. You gave them to me, and we put them up on the website. I think we've sold 12. But people that are interested, not one person has bought that CD from our website and said it was bad. Every person who's bought one has come back and said it was a great album.
Well, that's the thing, and I get that all the time. Lots of people, when the album was current. And out there, when I give away copies, I'd have copies where you'd have, the pass along thing where people, so they would end up in the hands of people I didn't know, like three, what is it?
3 degrees of separation
down.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And I would get calls or emails from people who loved the record. So Highway Down, had Brian chosen to go forward with it, would have absolutely been a purely organic success.
You guys were so great. That album was so good. And then I keep imposing myself, and I shouldn't have. But I remember there was one time I said, look, if I can book you guys some gigs, I can find you guys some stuff. And then I don't know who came up with the name of the guy who was here at Buck Owens. And they said there was like 7 guys in Nashville that ran Nashville that decided everything for the big records, the big labels. But one of them was out here on the West Coast. And I said, oh, cool. Where's that guy? Well, he's right here in Bakersfield. I said, far out. It's where I live. Where is he? So he works at Buck Owens, the Crystal Palace. And I said, all right, give me his name. And I was determined to get you guys a meeting with that guy. And everyone said, dude, you're just a big, fat, dumb mechanic. You don't know anything about the music industry. And I said, no, I don't. But I'm going to get, and so I found the guy's name, can't remember it now. And sure enough, you guys had a little bit of a meet that one time at that concert. We got you and Brian in there, but in the part of me imposing myself as trying to find you guys connections and gigs. And, I will tell you that Brian was going to change the name. He goes, I don't like Highway Down. He goes, that's a terrible name. I think you did too.
Yeah, I didn't, we came up with it. We were satisfied with it, but it did not age well with either of us.
Yeah, well, I remember stopping you guys one night and go, okay, quit fucking talking about changing the name. We're not changing the name. And you're like, we. I go, that's right, we. I'm imposing myself. Yeah. It just seemed like a great country name. It was like a country music.
I thought it was slightly unimaginative.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was a mainstream name that everybody could remember. It was like, far out, man, Highway Down. I'm down with that. Let's go. And but that was one of the moments when I came back and my wife says, what? I said, I think I stepped on my dick a little bit. I told them they were going to change the name and I told them they couldn't. And she goes, well, who are you to say that? I said, I'm not. I'm nobody. But I just stood there and go, you're not fucking changing now. Now let's go. It was just that type of stuff. And, I don't know. I wanted to do. I was going to take at the time. I had taken some money to go to out of something and was going to move some money around. I forget what we were doing. Something that Mary and I were trying to do. Anyway, I had like $38,000, and I said, okay, so I'm taking that money, and I was gonna do something with you guys. Like we were gonna go I forget what it was. I said, we got this opportunity. If we can get on a plane and we can go here and talk to these guys. She about divorced me. She goes, what are you doing? They haven't asked you to do anything. I said, no, I really believe in these guys. I really believe in the music. Yeah. I want to go do this. And she actually said, okay, if you think this is the way to go. And I go, how could this music miss? And that was before I learned how the music industry works. And I absolutely had no shot of getting anywhere with anything other than me forcing my way into doors.
Well, and that would have worked for us.
Now
I was well, no. I was actually confident in it and certainly willing to go along for the ride. Brian, I think, had a little more of a conscience about it. And that is like, the idea of somebody putting their life, reputation, money, anything on the line for him I don't think sat well with him.
Yeah, but you guys know that I didn't care. I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I wanted to see it succeed. I was like, you guys had already put your time into it. Why was it okay for you to do it, but not for me? I would have tried that.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of I think a Protestant ethic that Brian has ingrained in him, and myself, even though I've somehow managed to
overlook it.
Yes, for my own selfish ambitions.
Well, you know the two shows we played here because we got a big piece of property. We built that stage. You know how much money I spent in wood on that stage? It was like $3,000 in wood. And then someone says, "Dude, you could have just rented a stage."
Yeah.
I went,
"That was me."
They do that? Yeah, I think it was you. Like they rent these stages. And, what? Yeah, I didn't know that. That's how far removed from the music industry it was. I'm buying plywood.
But it's funny because it's like I looked at it. I'm like going, "This is just the guy we need," because most bands. I mean, I think Rush is this great example of if you because Rush is they're an organic success where they just started young and they pushed and they had Ray Daniels, I think, was their manager. He was just a young guy who didn't know anything about the music business as well, and pushed and believed in them, and that's what you need, especially because there are people. The artists don't know how to be the guys who push. We need managers.
Well, you guys were kind of. You guys, I want to say you're aimless, but you didn't really have a plan of where to go next. And everywhere I went, introducing myself as a quasi manager, I got the same question. I'm knocking down the door to get to the program director, holding your guys' album in my hand, and every time I did that, I got the same quote. "Dude, this is not how this works. What are you doing?" Yeah. I said, "Look, I don't know how it works, man. Are you in charge of what goes on the radio?" He goes, "Yeah, more or less." I said, "Then I'm in the right fucking room. Let's go." Yeah. But I didn't know any better. I didn't know how you went about this. I just knew there's the radio station, and you even had to tell me, "Okay, the guy who's in charge is a program director." Okay, got it. Program director. Yeah. Then I went. The same with getting into the Crystal Palace and meeting that guy. I didn't know you're supposed to talk to somebody and make an appointment. I'm like, "Where's the dude going to be?" "Well, he's going to be at this event." "All right. Who's his right-hand person?" It was some chick. I talked to her. I said, "Look, man, I know I'm fucking this up. I know I don't know what I'm doing, but these guys need to talk to that guy." And she was like, "This isn't how this works." And I said, "Yeah, but this is what," she goes, "Okay." But I didn't know any better. Yeah. It was just me going, and that's what I was going to do with some money. I was going to take some of that money and put it towards something where we could get in front of the people. Like we did those 2 concerts here, and we did one in the middle of, June, and it was 115 degrees outside. Everyone was dying. Yep. And then we did one in the winter time, and it was like minus 12. Yep. We picked the 2, but the whole idea was we invited all the radio executives and the DJs and the people that we could get to come out. I didn't know if that was right or wrong. I just thought, okay, they are going to hear these guys play and they're going to hear what I hear. I had no idea. The most disheartening story I heard from one of those guys, we're sitting out here and we had all those big round tables with the white cloths and the candles on them that night. And it was getting towards the evening, guys. We had 3 people play that night. That one lady who came up with her boyfriend and they played. And then Truxton Mile played before you guys. And then you guys came on. It was towards the end of your last set. And the guy says, "Listen," and he was a big guy with a cigar. Yeah. He was that guy. And he says, "Look, I get what you're doing here." He goes, "I love the enthusiasm." He goes, "You got this old school push about you." He goes, "But I want to tell you how things run." And this was the most disheartening story I ever heard. He says years ago, record labels discovered that with their money, they would come into a radio station, a country station, and say, "Listen, we're going to fund your fair, your tractor pull, your monster car rally, your summer events that you guys produce. We're going to come in and put in $600,000. But what we're going to do is we're going to tell you what song to play and which order to play these songs." And it was during the mainstream. It was like they chose the 10 hours of the day. After that, you can play what you want. But they would, I go, "Are you kidding me?" I go, "Is that really how this works?" He goes, "Listen, there's record labels. They don't own the radio stations." He goes, "They come in and they just fund their programs. And in return, they tell you what song is going to be a hit, what song is going to be you're going to play from which artist. They got 10 artists, and they flood it. So all you hear is their stuff.
Yeah.
And this is the other part that he said to me. He goes, some of the best music I have ever heard in my life will never be heard by anyone.
Yep.
And I went, dude, I said, he goes, I know what you're saying, but it's almost impossible to do the way you're going about it. And I said, because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah. It's basically it's old school payola, and they found a way to do it to skirt the payola laws. And that's how it comes around. When I was with Say So, and we were going to be the pick, this is September of 1987, and they're saying, you're going to be the pick hit of the week, second week of December on MTV. And of course, they were going to MTV with I don't know, Pepsi money or something, or whoever. It's like we're going to go Pepsi going to get
with record MTV, label money, man. Yeah.
So, but that's how it goes through there. It goes through a sponsor. It's a money laundering operation.
But the part that's disheartening is they get to pick what everybody hears.
Yeah.
They decide which song on the album is going to be a hit, more or less.
And more or less, because there are things they've tried where the public just...
No. And there's also things they've tried to put on the sideline that the public goes, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Yeah. And they have to come around and go, well, all right, we're on board.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have no music experience. I don't know how to play an instrument. I don't know anything about the industry other than what I learned from you and some from Brian. And I remember there was a year and a half working with you guys that I thought there's nothing stopping us from making it. The hardest part is making the music that people like. These guys have already done it.
Yeah.
All I got to do is get it in front of the right person. Even if I got to hang upside down from a rope at their third story window in Nashville, someone's got to hear this. Yeah. And then to find out that doesn't matter anymore.
Absolutely. And it's funny because the time we were doing that, we made that record in 2012. What was happening at that time out of Nashville is the big giant bro country movement. And and it still persists to this day.
What is that? Describe that.
Bro country is essentially Luke Bryan.
Okay.
Luke Bryan, Country Girl Shakin' For Me. It's really bad rock. With a country twang, in the vocal, and it's party music. Everything that's coming out of Nashville is mindless fucking party music.
I'm not a big country guy.
It's essentially, for all intents and purposes, it's 80s hairdo rock.
Well, see,
repackaged.
I'm not a big country guy. My wife is, as you know, but I'm not. And so when you say stuff about, I don't always get it.
Let's bro country is this. Every song is exactly the same. Okay. It's the chord progression is 1, 4, 5, 6. Most pop music is that anyways, has been for decades and decades. But the lyrics are always, it's going to be your girl rocking those Daisy Dukes or those tight blue jeans. It's like a Mad Libs where you pick,
you just fill in the blanks.
Fill in the blanks.
Pick
a brand of jeans, pick a brand of truck, or like on that diamond plate bumper, or
right,
or then you name check a brand of alcohol. And then you name check some legacy artist from the 70s. I remember like one year there was definitely two. There's possibly 3 people who name checked the Marshall Tucker Band. And I'm just like, this is a fucking joke. And I remember watching an EPK on one of Luke Bryan's records. And I'm usually not one to criticize artists, but this guy, man, if there was ever an emptier hat in Nashville, man, it's Luke Bryan. Here's a guy who has nothing to say.
Don't tell that to my daughter. I got a daughter who would just be all over you right now, yelling at you. She loves Luke Bryan.
And he's kind of a weird guy because you look at him and he's got childbearing hips. You're like, yeah, that's a funny shaped dude, man. My only thing is that it's like even after Highway Down, I'd played in a few other acts, and I'm doing the corporate gigs.
Yeah.
Because those pay. You do 4 sets a night, and you got to do what you got to do. And when I learn these songs, I make the playlists on YouTube. Yeah. So I got to watch the videos, and I tell you that snaggletooth brunette in the Country Girl Shakin' For Me. I liked her. She was the only thing that made that thing tolerable.
You watch that again and again. Well, Eric, I'm telling you, man, listening to, I've known you for years, but listening to your story on how you got into music, the bands you played with in high school, you got this close to the big record deal. Man. And then you pull back, you end up being the bass guy in the San Fernando Valley in LA, and all the studio work you did for everybody, all the bass work you did, the gear you ran, all the names you ran into of all the people and all the places you've been. What strikes me about you is you don't ever feel like you were on the outside looking in. You never felt second place. You always felt, it sounds like every story, you're right in the middle of it. You really felt like this is, here's a good way to put it. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people that if they said, hey, if you work really hard, you can get up to the level of being an assistant engineer, a subcontracting engineer. Yeah. You could be this guy. People would die for that.
Yeah.
People would aspire to be that and go, I get to be around these people and see these things and travel all over and do they would give their left nut to be that guy. And you did it all. You did those things. It's huge, man. I don't think you think so, but it is.
Like I said, again, I'm not a name branded industry. There's a lot of guys who do what I do who are a name brand.
Right.
And, they command much bigger money for it than what I do. And most of them are there because one, they're that good.
Right.
And two, in any gig, especially in the arts, man, in music industry, there's two things. There's skill, then there's the hang.
Yeah.
And I'm a little of an idiosyncratic guy, so I don't always,
hang
so well,
Well, you talked about that earlier when you left you weren't going to go on the tour because you weren't going to partake in that. I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think in everybody's life, there's people that you could say, I should have turned left when I turned right.
Yeah.
I should have moved forward when I decided to step back. I think everybody's got stories of what they could have and would have changed, but not many in your life would have led you down a path that you'd have been happier with. I don't think.
Yeah, no. The big, I look at, especially like right around 92 where I really started to pull back all the way at a time when I was young, I was relevant, the phone was ringing, all sorts of people were calling me. Had I just decided like, hey, you know what, just roll with it and hang. Yeah, I could have escalated, but I was more concerned with securing the deal with Susan, my wife.
I was just going to say, maybe you wouldn't have ended up with Susan.
Yeah, and that's
a trade-off you could never justify.
Everybody plays the scenario in their head. If I could get a do-over in life, you think about all the cringy things you've done in your life. Yeah,
sure.
And if you could go back to age 5 and now have all, knowing everything you know now.
Yep, right.
And just avoid all those missteps, man. I couldn't do it because what if I went back to this area and I missed Susan?
Yeah. Well, I will have a complete moment of candor with you here. The only reason I invited you up here is I thought you were bringing her. I can't tell you what a disappointment it was, Eric, when my wife texted me and said, Susan's not here. And I texted her back. I said, well, it's going to be a quick interview. I just can't think what's the point. But,
I know. Susan Susan lights up the room. Susan.
She's wonderful. She's absolutely wonderful.
Susan has, she's the one thing in life that's given me any sort of self-confidence whatsoever. Mainly because she's, she keeps me in check and, keeps me from being a complete social disaster.
She's wonderful in every way. And she tolerates. All right, let me ask you this. So, how many guitars do you own?
Only 15.
You have more than 15. You have more than 15. You had a picture you sent me one time looking down from your...
that was a combined. That was mine and Kerry Park's collection.
You sure?
Yeah, Kerry was up doing sessions at my place.
Because there's like 38 guitars in one room, and you took it as an overhead view.
Yeah, because we were doing we were cutting bits for Highway Down with Kerry Park. So he had his mandolins, his baritones, banjos, everything.
You lined all those things up. You climbed up your stairs and took a picture of it. And I remember showing my wife and going, "Okay, so divorced? Is he gonna get divorced over this? Because that's like 9 too many." That was just one aspect. The other one, now you're into model trains.
Yeah.
And she hasn't kicked you out for that.
Nope.
Wow, she tolerates so much from you. Yeah. That's wonderful, though. I'm telling you, I think the world of her. So I'm glad. I all the things I get mad about during this, and I've gotten mad during a bunch of your stories on, things you missed or the way you were treated and something happened. But as you look back, any one of those things could have made it where you weren't with Susan. And then what for?
Yeah.
All of them, what for? Well, I don't know. I think I think you're a better bass player than I'll ever be a manager, but I can't tell you how pleased I am that you took time to drive up here and share all this stuff with us. I'll edit this thing together and we'll get it up there as soon as I can. I'm like 4 interviews behind, but it'll get there.
Yeah.
But God, what an exciting life, man! And to be in the industry you love the whole time, other than the Lumber City job, a lot of it seemed very, very musical. It was very one form or another.
Oh yeah. No, and I've been able to, I've been able to, meet and play with people way above my pay grade.
That's
all the time.
That's the icing on the cake, man, is the stories you get and the adventures you get with those people. That's incredible stuff. Well, thanks for coming out, man. I'm going to cut it off here. We've been going like 2 hours. It's one of the longest ones we've done so far. Yeah. I think we could have kept talking for another hour, but I'll tell you what, Brian's coming up. He's coming up and he's going to do one too. I think maybe at some point down the road, maybe I ought to get you and Brian out here to talk about some stuff too, because I think there's a lot of things that play off each other, but you'll hear Brian's when Brian comes up. He'll hear yours. You can hear his, and we'll talk about it more then. But Eric, thanks again, my man.
Hey, you're welcome. No, thanks for having me.
Hey, everybody, I got to go. I got to get out of here. It's going to be 2 hours of interview. It's going to take my dumbass 19 hours to edit it. But it's a lot of fun. You guys, I told you this guy was coming. I warned you. It's almost like the Fight Doctor one. You guys have been begging for 2 things for the past 10 months. You did the Fight Doctor one and one for Eric to get here. All right. We got them both. We got them both under wraps. One's published and one we're working on. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, KGXT Studios and KGXT Radio is coming. Remember 2 things. I don't know where you're listening. I have no idea on the planet where you are right now. AM, FM, Sirius XM, or perhaps you're listening in on the Armed Service Radio Network. I don't know. But remember 2 things. 1, wherever you go, there you are. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Life is